All around the world today and tomorrow, people will be gathering together, and they will be gathering to eat. Christians will be gathering because of Christmas to eat in airports and in restaurants, around tables and rescue missions throughout the world. In such places as the United States and in the UK, in the Ukraine and Uganda, and in Uruguay. People will gather together and they will celebrate and remember as they eat food, as they celebrate with friends and with family, as they exchange the faith that God has given us. And we'll gather at tables to eat and to celebrate together, both the gift of life as well as the gift of God. Our family gathered on the 16th of December to celebrate Christmas together. While we took turns watching each other open our gifts, and then later at various groupings to play games together, the most communal thing that happened was when we gathered at one long table together and ate. It was the clanging of plates, the swishing and drinking of water. It was the chatter and the laughter. It was the stories that were told. It was moments of smiling and just simply enjoying each other's company. It's fun. Isn't that just the best? When we can sit down and we can eat, we can talk, and we can celebrate. At least 3 times a day, most of us do this thing called eating. Some of us do it more frequently. Some of us nibble and nibble throughout the whole daytime. But the wonder of this whole thing is it's no wonder that Jesus, when stories are told of him, many of those stories are told about him sitting at table, at banquet tables, at individuals' tables, and even at the Lord's table, eating food together. One of my favorite stories about Jesus comes from Luke's Gospel, the 14th chapter, and it's a story about food. Now, when I think about growing up and Christmas in my parents' house, I don't know about you, but I can smell what it smells like to walk in the house when the food is ready. Is that true for you? I can smell the steam of the mashed potatoes. I can smell the meat that has been cooking. I can smell some of the sweets that have been prepared. And it is enjoyable. That's one of the gifts that God has called us to enjoy. It's the thing called food. So Jesus tells this story. There once was a man who threw a great banquet, and he invited many. When it was time for dinner, he sent his servant to invite his guests, and he said, "Come, for the food is on the table." Then all began to beg off and to make their excuses. The first of them said, "I cannot come because I just bought a piece of property and I need to go out and survey it." Another said, "I just bought 5 yoke of oxen. I need to go out and test them out to make sure if they work." The third one said, "I can't come. I just got married. I need to go home to my spouse." So the servant came back and reported to the man about the results, and he was outraged and told the servants, "Go quickly into the city streets and into the alleys. Collect all who appear to be in need of a square meal, all the homeless, the crippled, the blind, the lame, and anyone you can lay your hands on, and bring them in, for my food, my banquet is ready." And the servant reported back, "Master, I did that, and there's still room in the banquet hall." And the master said, "Go out to the country roads then, into the highways and the byways, wherever you can find them, and drag them in, because I want my banquet hall filled." There's always a place at God's table. And at God's table, everyone is welcome. The story of Jesus that we read tonight began in Nazareth with Mary. And then for About 30 years, Jesus eats at his mom and dad's table or whatever table he ends up moving out. We never do hear if Jesus moves out of his parents' house and buys his own in Nazareth. But maybe like some, we still live with mom and dad because the rent is cheap. Huh? Anyway, finally, Jesus moves out of the village of Nazareth and he begins his ministry. Now, Nazareth is a fun-named town because on one level, it could mean that it was, in fact, a watchtower because it's built on a hill. Or else, my favorite is, it could also mean, Nazareth could mean sprout. Sprout. Something springing forth. As Jody read tonight from Isaiah chapter 11, it spoke of David and his father Jesse, and how at a certain time, God, who had placed David on the throne 1,000 years before Jesus, some 400 years later, finds these Jews homeless. They have been defeated. The temple's been destroyed. The city of Jerusalem has been sacked. And the Jews have been taken off into captivity in Babylon. And now the prophet Isaiah comes along. And did you catch it in Isaiah 11? He said, there is a sprout coming forth from the stump of Jesse. Just when it looks like God has given up and the tree has been cut down, a new sprout is coming forth from the side of the tree, the stump of Jesse, and it will grow forth. And you see, we understand that to be the sprout that represents that heir of David, who is Jesus the Lord, whose name and whose identity we celebrate tonight. It's this story that moves us and fills us with hope. You see, when things become hopeless, perhaps in our own life, when it appears that we may have lost our way, there is a God who continues to pursue us. Even when we may have given up on God, God never gives up on us. That's the way it is with parents who never give up on their kids, even when their kids walk out and slam the door and turn their back even for years on their family. You see, those parents continue to wait for the day and the moment that there might be a reunion. This is God's very nature. Try as we may to run away from the one who has made us in his Son, Jesus Christ, who loves us. Turn our hearts into the busyness of life and think that all that we have is something that I've accomplished. It's because of my creativity that I've somehow achieved, rather than the author of creativity himself, our God. So be it. But you see, God patiently waits for us. That's the story of tonight. It's a story of a God who always has a spot waiting at the banquet table for us, just set in case we should change our mind and we should dare to embrace the promise of to whom we belong. So there is always room and a spot for us at God's table. So what God did by sending his Son into this world was to make possible that for all people. We heard that in the gospel. This message in Luke 2, it said, this message, this good news is not for the few. It's not for those who are good enough. It's not for those of us who are successful enough only. This good news is for all people. And that's the amazing nature of God. Setting a place at the table for all the people that God has made. For you see, God chose those whom the world considers absurd, we read in Scripture, to shame the wise. He singles out the weak of this world to shame the strong. He chooses the world's lowborn and despised, those who count for nothing, to reduce to nothing those who were something. We read in 1 Corinthians 1. See, God does not judge by human standards, by what people see or what people hear, what people imagine. God looks at this place, as Cindy sang about earlier, this place called the heart. because it's this place, in the heart of our life, where love dwells. Sometimes a love that is broken, a love that is hurt, even a love for ourselves that sometimes gets confused. God loves us deeply. And as we open the heart of our life, God joyfully comes back in. So tonight, we celebrate joy to the world. The Lord has come. He's come for all people. There's a place at the table for everyone. So I say to you, even if you've not practiced this faith in a long time, or maybe you never have, tonight, maybe just tonight, you might hear as you listen to your heart and turn off all the arguments of your mind and listen with your heart to the author whose heartbeat beats for the world that God loves so much. Even with all of its messed up politics and its messed up power and its messed up economies, where so many in the world struggle with so little and so few have so much, not the way God intended. But somehow in the midst of it, as we listen to it, we discover that God has a better way. And His way is a way of love and acceptance and peace and joy. This is what our world hungers for, but cannot find. So as we open our hearts and we listen tonight, maybe, just maybe, you might hear the invitation of God saying, welcome home. Welcome home, my daughter. Welcome home, my son. You have never been forgotten. That's the good news of the gospel. Tonight in a manger, in a simple economy, in a far-off place called Bethlehem, there the Savior of the world is born. Not in a palace, not in the center of the Roman Empire, but rather in a distant little village, out of sight of many. This is God's way. So tonight, if your hearts are open, may God speak into you. May you receive once again the assurance of His love. And may you find that homing presence that we all deeply seek. Because it's as we home in the presence of God that we find our true existence. Thanks be to God tonight for our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ and for His abundant and overarching grace and love for us. Amen.